Welcome to Tuesday's Tips from Sew Very Easy. My name is Laura, and most patterns will say, please read before you begin. Well, I do like to read my patterns, and I follow along the steps in my mind, and I also do one other thing. Here's a pattern that I've been working on recently, and with all patterns, I do read them. I start from the beginning and go right through. From there, I start to make my notes. If I've changed the fabric or I've changed the name of the fabric, so at a glance I know what fabric I'm using. I also will take the picture of the finished quilt and I make notes on that quilt. If I cannot see the separations of the quilt blocks, I draw them in. Then at the same time, I write down the cutting size of the pieces. For example, this block is a 9.5 inch cut block. I have 1.5 by 24.5. They're all cut sizes. This last border, the direction says to cut it at 3 inches. I've made myself a note that I'm going to cut that at 9.5 inches. By copying this pattern and making my cutting notes, at a glance, it's easier for me to lay out the pattern pieces and to see exactly where I'm going. If I've changed the fabrics, a lot of times I will start with that pattern picture printed in black and white. I then take those cutting directions and transfer the information on that black and white pattern. So as I'm reading, in my mind, I'm doing the steps right along that pattern, making the notes for the cutting sizes. I find that having that pattern printed in black and white, it is less distracting than the colored version because I did not use any of these colors or fabrics, so a lot of times it's easier to photocopy it. Instead of photocopying, you can always make a drawing and start by each step as you're reading the pattern. So you're going to start with the first step, do the second, do the third, making your notes on either your printed fabric or on the top page. And after a while, you're going to see how the pattern is going to be put together. So when it does come to cutting it out and sewing it, you've already sort of done it in the mind. So I find it just makes it a whole lot easier. And at a glance, I can see all of my notes on my one page. So it really does help me if I read the pattern, follow those steps in my mind, and I make my notes. I find when I do get to the sewing, it sews a lot faster and I usually make less mistakes. Thank you for joining me today on Tuesday's Tips. Feel free to subscribe, and as always, come on back. Let's see what we're talking about next time in the sewing room. Bye for now.